Hey guys, Steven from RP Digital here. We're bringing in a new set of inks, the Vibra ink sets, which is going to supersede our old ink sets. These ink sets are OEKO-TEX certified. They will definitely be less prone to clogging. They have been improved on dramatically, and then you can also hit a wide color gamut compared to the previous ink sets. Specifically the cyan and the magentas, they have lighter pigments in there now. Previously the magenta was slightly more darker towards a blood red, so now we're expecting to hit a lot more of the lighter colors than previously stated. And today we'll be looking at swapping out the ink sets from the previous one to the new one. So I'll show you how to do that starting now. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the previous ink sets from the ink bottles and the sub-tanks. This machine is exactly the same as the Eagle. We're currently working on the Falcon 2 head, so the same method will be applied to both machines. First thing we're going to do is remove this cover here. So you're going to unscrew these wing nuts on both sides, just a tad. You're going to remove this right out. So now we have access to the ink bottles, which we can actually pull out from here. So you want to have a little bit of a container here, probably a bigger size. I brought two. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the white ink bottle, we're going to start removing it slowly. Just be careful not to tilt it too much, because this is not sealed here, so you could actually spill out the ink from a different area. So just be safe with that. Got the container. Now, after you remove the white ink, you want to double check inside, because there could be a case where there's some white sediments being built up right at the bottom here. It may be hard to see here, so you definitely want to cut the lines here off or remove them, and then just wash the white container. The colors are not prone to that. It is just the whites due to the titanium dioxide pigments inside to make it that way. So we're going to remove this here. So we're going to cut this right over here and remove this here as well, and have this cleaned out with some hot water in a sink. Have some paper towels around you while you're cutting these things out. Usually this would come with a clip that you can put on and clip the ink line so it doesn't drip, but in this case I do not have one, so I will be using some forceps, which is right here. So we're going to cut the recirc line right up the top here. You're going to cut that one out. I'm just going to bring this down here together so I can clip them both at the same time, and then I can proceed to cut this one out as well. Now we separated the white ink tank. Now I'm going to have this washed out first so we can get all that sediments built up that's inside there out, and then we'll come back to this to proceed. Alright, so cleaned out the white ink bottle, removed all the sediments in the bottom there. Now we're going to continue on with the colors. So we're going to follow the same process again here. Pop this out. There we go. So we've emptied everything from the ink bottles. Now we got to do the same thing with the sub-tanks that are located here, because they do still carry a bit of ink, and you don't want that mixing in with the new Vibra ink sets. Alright, so there's a bracket here that is holding the sub-tanks right here. So there's two screws, one located on this side and one located right at the top here. We're going to remove both of them. From here, now you can remove the bracket. Now that we have access to these sub-tanks, we can move them around. Again, we're going to want to dump everything out. You're going to pull this out. Grab the yellow one here. You're going to take this and you're going to dump this out. And then you can slide this back in and just make sure that rubber grommet is inserted back inside, just like that. Wipe any of the excess ink that may have spilled over. Do the same thing for the magenta. Place the grommet back in, make sure it is sealed. Just give these lines a bit of a push downward so that it gets to the bottom, because you don't want it to be pulling air. So you're going to push these lines directly to the bottom. And you can probably see it right on this here a little bit where that line is. Just make sure again it is at the bottom of the sub tank. Next one is the cyan color. Lastly, we got black. Make sure you line everything up. There are little slits here to put in between each sub tank. Placing the 2 screws back on, one on the side there and one at the top. Just double check that everything is put in properly. Now we can reconnect the white line here. So you want to make sure that you do remember which one goes where. One is specific for recirculation, and the other one comes out of the outlet right over here. So the way to check here is if you look at these tags, you'll see an in. You'll say an in, and the other one should say an out. So the out is going to go onto the top of the ink bottle for the recirculation. Make sure to push it all the way down. And then we're going to put this right over here. Just make sure you are supporting this part right over here while inserting it, because this is plastic and it could snap right off. So the next step is you're going to have to syringe the dampers, all the excess ink that is in there. So you're going to open this front cover up. You're going to have access to the dampers that are behind this cage. We're going to have to unscrew this cage off. So all you got to do is unloosen this screw here, unloosen this one here, and then what you're going to do is at the bottom there's a knob. So on the Falcon it's harder to access, but it's this circle cylinder knob. You can spin it to the left and keep on spinning it until it stops. This means that the carriage assembly, the capping assembly is now lowered to the bottom, and you're actually able to shift the carriage left and right. There's another screw located on the right side here. So if it's not loose already, you're going to want to unloosen that one there. And then there's one more screw hidden in here. You might have to just put a small Allen key in there to loosen it up. Once that's done, you can lift this carriage out. Now we have access to the dampers. So you have the white head on the front here and the color head on the back. So if this was a 4-head eagle, you have 2 whites in the front and 2 colors in the back there. And we're going to be following the same process throughout. What you're going to do is you're going to grab a syringe, make sure it has a tip like this. So when you pull one of these dampers off, you'll see at the bottom there, this is where I'm going to just sit this in here and pull the syringe. Now be very careful that you do not press this cylinder right over here. As you can see, it will drop ink as soon as you press it. So if there's any ink, it's just going to spill everywhere. So you're going to have the syringe right there, and you're going to start pulling all that white ink. I'm going to keep on pulling until it's air. And there we go. So now we got the air. So we can put this damper back and go on to the next one. Just make sure that this is all put back straight. It does not make a difference if you flip it the other way around. Just make sure that you don't end up pinching these lines when you do put it back. And just make sure that they're flat on there. So the white is completely empty now. We're going to want to take out the color dampers and syringe the color dampers, which are located in the back here. So what you want to do is take some paper towel or microfiber cloth. You're going to just put it in this area here, just to protect any of the cables, any of the wires. You don't want ink to drip on the head wires, because if it gets into the head connectors, it can and will short out the heads. So once I put this here, you're going to want to grab each damper out. And again, be careful with this bag here, because if you put any pressure here, it will spill ink, and you don't want to be putting pressure on here. So you're going to lay it down here. You're going to pull the next damper out. Just be very slowly, take your time. All right. Same process as the white dampers. You're going to take your syringe and you're going to start pulling all the ink out. Now you want to be careful because every time you insert your syringe here, you're putting a bit of ink on the tip here. You want to clean that tip every time that you pull, because with the yellow damper, it is very easily to get mixed ink inside of here. And once that's happens, you kind of have to replace the damper completely. So good idea is to start with the yellow first before you do anything else. Just point it downwards so you can get as much of that ink out. Clean the tip. Go on to the next one. Now it has been fully removed. There's no more ink in the white dampers or in the colors. We're going to leave the color dampers in here for now, because once we fill up the ink bottles with ink, we're going to have to syringe the ink through the entire system to make sure that there is no air bubbles in here, and then we're going to be placing this back on the print heads. So the first thing you want to do is you get your new bottles here. You want to give them a good shake. For the cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, you can just go back and forth a little bit. You don't have to shake it too vigorously. Now for the whites, the white does have that titanium dioxide pigment inside of there. You definitely want to give this a good shake. And then after that, you want to let it settle for 15 minutes, because there will be a lot of air bubbles in there, and we don't want to start pouring this in and have air bubbles getting through the lines, because it will take a lot of time and you'll have nozzle dropouts while printing. So we're going to give this a really good shake back and forth. So now it's to the point that there's bubbles built up in there that you can't even hear anything shaking around. So we're going to leave this now for about 10 minutes, let all the air bubbles settle out before we actually pour this one in. Okay, so we're back here to the ink bottles. So now we're going to fill up each of the ink bottles with ink. We're going to start with white. So just be careful when pouring it in, just so you don't get any backsplash. One whole bottle will fill up this container here. Next we have the black, cyan. Just be careful, sometimes this will break off, and you don't want to pour with this because this could actually fall inside. And lastly, the yellow. Now that we filled everything in, you're going to want to put all the caps back into its place. Now you don't want the caps to be on fully tight, so you're going to have it go closed and bring it back a few threads like that. You're going to do that for every container. The reason for this is just to make sure that we do have some air flow in there. We don't want there to be no air, as it could create a back pressure and not flow the ink properly. And just like that. Make sure all these are unclipped, because now we're going to move back to the front and we're going to syringe all the lines to get the ink loaded into the printheads. So we're back at the front here. You have all these dampers that have no ink in them. So what we're going to have to do is syringe them until we get ink back into the dampers. So again, keep the tip clean here, just so we don't mix ink in the dampers. We're going to start off with the yellow. You're going to have it upside down like this so we can get the most of the air out. So you're going to start syringing this up. As you can see, if there's no air bubbles happening in here, then we're good to go. Just lift this right off, put the syringe to the side. Now you can see that we're about 3/4 full, and that's what you kind of want before you insert into the printhead. If it is low while printing, you will have nozzle dropouts, and you'll be wondering why. So let's put this back in there. Again, be careful of the cables and be careful of touching this, because if you touch this, the ink will spill out. So we're going to slowly put this back where it belongs. Just like that. Next one we're going to do is the magenta. Again, have it flipped upside down. Don't worry about the difference in the dampers. Both can be used. The reason why that damper was just changed was just because that we had some mixed colors that came up from the machine sitting around. So the damper needs to be replaced. Just like that. So now we have a full damper. And we're going to put this back in there. Next one is the cyan color. Here we got the black. And just double check that they're all placed down properly and none of the lines are pinching. So you just want to be careful. Everything there looks good. Now we can move on to the front, the white dampers next. At the beginning you may notice that there's nothing coming through. Just give it some time, it will come out. Now I'm going to pull the second damper out, follow the same process, and at this point the white ink should come into the dampers quickly, just because we do have the sub tank that filled up now. Double check, make sure everything is in there and flat, nothing falls out. And now the system is primed and ready to go. Now we can perform ink fill-ups, nozzle test prints, make sure we're testing, add the new print mode into CAD-Link, which is going to be called RB Vibra V3 6-Pass. That is what you're going to be looking for. We'll be sending this to the cloud for CAD-Link, so that you'd be able to just update it straight to CAD-Link and have your printer ready to go and start printing. Alright, so now we can put everything back together. So you can put this cover back on the inks. Just make sure to slide it underneath. Now you want to double check on your ink bottle stations. There is a switch here. If you press it, it either presses down, press it again, and it presses up. If it's up, that means your ink bottles are off for the low sensor alerts. So you want to make sure that this is down on each one. Because what can happen is if it's off here, you'll never know that you're low on ink, and then you'll start getting nozzle dropouts. Now we're going to put the front cover back on. So you're going to slide these right on the outside into the screws first. So just make sure that it is on the outside of this carriage here. Now there is a washer on this side, so you just got to make sure that it shifts over. There we go. And then on the front here, you would just want to push it down so that it's right behind these two screws here. So we're going to tighten this all down now. Carriage is down, so we can move this to the left. Tighten this screw here. Push it back. And you can tighten this or leave this loose. It will not fall off because it is really tough to access this screw for next time. So we'll leave it as it is. Now we can power on the machine and we're ready to go.